Hello, folks. Hello to where you are. Good day to where you are. And I hope everything's okay there because we have a very special guest in this episode. Right now, I welcome Mr. Alex Cook, and he will be introducing himself in this episode. And he has a lot of insights to share for us. So, Mr. Alex Cook, can you introduce yourself and share to the world who you are and what you do for your purpose in life?
Sure. So first off, thank you so much, Angelo, for your invite. And it was funny how cool how we got to meet through Dev Curate. So that was really nice.
Yes.
So yeah, so a bit of background about me. I'm originally adopted from Romania by German parents, and I lived there for 9 years as a child. Since I was 2 years old, so I lived there till I was about 11. Just before I turned 11, I lived in Germany, and then as a family migrated to New Zealand, and yeah, also studied in New Zealand and went to university there and studied politics and international relations. And yeah, New Zealand was pretty lucky to meet so many people as well. And I've actually got a few friends from the Philippines.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
amazing.
great. And yeah, background about me, I've done quite a bit of work in the adoption space outside of my professional work. So I've done quite a bit of advocacy,
Hmm.
such as speaking at the Romanian Parliament, or I'm part of an NGO called I'm Adopted that a good friend of mine founded, and I'm on an ambassador there and on the board. And soon, once everyone has done their move, because a close friend of mine, he moved to Russia as well recently for
Hmm.
work. So once he's settled in, we'll be doing some more talks again. So what we've done there is in the pandemic, we've done online Q&As for adopted people,
Yeah.
but also I've done some co-research with a professor from another university in 2018. A professor asked me if I wanted to help her with some research on adoption research, and I got to co-present that with the professor in Canada in 2018 in Montreal.
That's amazing. You've been
And I've
so
yeah also done a bit of, and I've also done a TEDx talk on adoption.
yeah.
And professionally, I've worked in the corporate social responsibility space, and currently I'm in Germany doing a bit of traineeship for a German company
That's
to
amazing.
gain some more commercial experience. So
You've
thank you
done
for taking the time to invite me, Angelo. I'm looking forward to sharing things with you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I mean, like it's really a great opportunity and a great honor to have you on my channel and to speak about your advocacy. One thing that made me also get interested to really talk about the advocacy that you do is that you have also experienced it firsthand. And Alex, since we met in DevGrade, I've also got inspired by the insights that you shared about, a career in the United Nations. And right now you are doing a lot of things with global affairs regarding international adoptions. And at the same time, you have helped a lot of, youth our age to advocate and to campaign for children's rights and welfare and also the completion of family members. So let me ask you on the first question that I have right now. Can you share about your experience as an adoptee?
Sure, I guess so. So my experience of being adopted has been mainly positive.
Mm-hmm.
However, one of the constant questions that I always get is, where are you from?
Mm-hmm.
And even when I moved back to Germany, it got very interesting. People asking me when I had to register in my town, they said, "Oh, so how come you're born in Romania?" But in a curious way, and I always take the opportunity to share my story with people a bit there with the officials, and they were really intrigued. And I think the lessons that I kind of took from moving back to Germany is that some adopted people get a bit defensive when people ask where you're from. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of cases it's not with ill intent. I mean, there are some adopted people that have had it with ill intent, but I think a lot of people they're just curious and want to know where you're from, because I mean my story is really complicated. I'm basically three citizenships. I'm Romanian, German, and Kiwi, even though I don't have a Romanian passport anymore, but I've got Romanian birth certificate. So people always curious, oh, so where are you from? And why why do you look a bit not even, European? I mean, you've got darker skin. And, I explain to people that I'm adopted and part, Roma as well, which is, back in it's called Gypsy, but you can't say that anymore. So it's Roma. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, people are always really interested in, yeah, I think that's one of the pigment experience, or I guess the other experience with adoption is having lived now in basically two continents, Europe and Asia or Asia Pacific,
Yeah.
basically, or Australasia.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing because
Yeah, so I guess that's
yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing your background. But then again, I would have to commend you for like being able to travel the world because despite the fact that you've had an interesting childhood, you also were able to experience diverse culture, especially in growing. You first were born in Romania, and then you were adopted by German parents. You were raised by a loving German parent, and you grew up in Germany before you transferred to New Zealand, where you also earned your degree from the University of Auckland. And can you tell us when was the time when you decided to advocate for international adoption?
I would say I got quite involved in adoption, like in that advocacy space around 2013, 14. That
Mm-hmm.
was when I was invited to share my journey at the Romanian Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what made me decide is I guess just realizing that I've been lucky to have that experience, and I think because Romania they've closed international adoptions in other countries that I think if it's done with the right procedures, I think a lot of other kids should have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I actually saw your TED Talk video about your experience as a um an adoptee, and in there you detailed how harsh it was as a reality for many Romanian orphanage, or like children who are being held in institutions. And I believe that it's also not just in Romania that's happening there. It's also happening around the world, where children who have been abandoned or like been like who grew up without like proper families, they actually experience harsh realities when they're growing up in institutions. And can you elaborate further on like how you are advocating, aside from like being speaking about that issue in the Romanian parliament, how what are the campaign points or the activities that you do to combat the harsh experiences of children who are being held in institutions? And right now, I don't know if the Romanian government is still banning the international adoption, because I heard that they also closed it in 2001. And like what are some of the activities that you do, like aside from like the greatest opportunity that you had to speak about the issue in the Romanian parliament?
So I guess I'll give you some key points. So I guess first of all, you're right that around 2001 to 2003, Romania closed international adoption
Mm-hmm.
outside closed adoptions. And I guess you also asked what were the impacts of that on children, but to
Mm-hmm.
detail that one, I guess the broader impacts are that from a whole psychological perspective is that the kids' social and developmental needs aren't met. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually been done now by a famous study in Romania called the Bucharest Project by a US psychologist called Dr. Charles Nelson, who's
Mm-hmm.
also associated with Harvard University and others, done a long time study that basically proves there are significant also like physical mental delays in children if they stay more than 2 years in orphanages, and that can also be applied globally. So,
Mm-hmm.
and in the last couple of decades,
Mm-hmm.
has been about only one parent or no parents at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe with the international crisis, there'll be more orphans. And I guess, and then in terms of practical steps, I've mentioned one before, doing that research about the impact of adoptions on kids with that professor in New Zealand and presenting that in Montreal in 2018. And more recently, as we did before moving to Germany, is quite a lot of the I'm Adopted community. We did online talks, which we had about in half a year during the pandemic. We had about 10,000 viewership over half a year because we
Mm-hmm.
had different talks on. During the pandemic, we had to move everything online, so we actually haven't done any physical meetups for adopted people. But once the lockdown happens, my friend who's adopted from Russia, he probably wants to do a meetup in Russia, and I would like to try and get something going in Germany outside of work, if that's possible, on one weekend maybe. But we'll have to see how the pandemic plays out. So
Yeah.
basically, a lot of things have been moved online at the moment.
Yeah, that's the pandemic has really done a lot of like postponement when it comes to our like plans for the year. But I hope that because you're doing a really
Yeah.
good like advocacy and a promising one at that, I hope that it will the activities that you have in store in the future will push through. So these days, Alex, what are the current situation of like do you have like any information about the current situation of like orphanages in Europe in general and at the same time around the world? Like has there been an improvement over the past years when it comes to like the treatment of children, and also what can people do to um, support or give support to children in need, especially in kept in those institutions?
Well, I would actually say some of the points that I'm going to make, they're going to be quite counterintuitively, and they're going to go against your general emotions. So one point in terms of institutions, actually, there's been quite a big call, even from the UN, to basically try and close down orphanages, or they call it the deinstitutionalization of
Mm-hmm.
institutions, because of those findings from that professor in the US and Romania and other research that basically says keeping kids in orphanages is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I guess, the global situation. However, if you compare it to the late 90s, some of the competitions definitely have improved to some degree, but there are still quite a lot of cases where abuse happens in orphanages, and that's irrespective of country, be it, for instance, Romania or Germany. I mean, Germany doesn't have orphanage anymore, but it had in the past, or Australia or Canada. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just because of the power imbalances that happens if it's not managed correctly, which is very complex. Because if you have, adults basically adequate, basically giving them all the resources that they need and their training, there will be violence. I mean, there was stories in Romania in the 90s where kids were beaten death by the caretakers,
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't handle them. So, and even now there are cases where there's a lot of abuse happening in institutions, but that's the dynamic. So that's why a lot of organizations push for the deinstitutionalization. And then to your last point, what can people do on a practical step? This is actually not to support orphanages. So there are a lot of faith-based organizations that sometimes have good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
but going into it's called orphan volunteerism, or volunteerism in general in developing countries. It actually creates a demand for kids to be to have, where they think they're going to help children, but the children are actually just being exploited for the money. Because
Oh,
it's a $1 billion industry
yeah.
alone just in Southeast Asia, unfortunately, but all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Right. And
So I would say if people want to volunteer somewhere, I would say I would only do it if you're really certain that the kids are treated well, and you can. There's some guidelines out there, for instance, and some practical things that I've helped people to evaluate, or even in some of my past professional work, I've actually helped to decide actually we shouldn't fund an orphanage. We had a request for providing some funding to an orphanage in the Pacific Islands
Mm-hmm.
because I used to help manage some grants at my old company in New Zealand where I was working, and I said we can't do it because they don't have the proper protection for the kids. So you look for something called like basically what are their ways that they ensure to protect people, and they didn't list any there. So
Right.
yeah, so that's basically if you let's say you have in place. So a simple thing is, do they do police checks?
Mm-hmm.
And do they say you can only be certain hours with kids under supervision? And if that's the case, it's a bit more safer, but I'd still be very cautious of, what you get in, what somebody gets involved in.
So the best probably alternative solution would be like to really go on a more personalized, more affectionate treatment of children. When it comes to the fostering system, um I'm not sure if that would also work, but what is your opinion on that? Like when children get transferred from instead of being kept in an orphanage in a home, they are being transferred from one family to another. Would you support that, or what is your opinion on that system?
Are you talk just to clarify? Do you basically are we both thinking about foster care here, where basically a family takes on a child for let's say half a year or a year, and then
Yeah.
sometimes unfortunately be moved to another family, right?
Yes, yes. That's the concept that I have in mind when it comes to like an alternative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, what
It's
are the alternative solutions if that doesn't work, and if homes for children or like orphanages also don't work?
so I guess I would say the ideal solution I would say, or is I would personally say adoption, living like a permanent home for a child is the best, because
Mhm.
if you look at it from a developmental perspective, is having having the well like from developmental kids, they need security, they need something, they need some routine in them is the best, but constantly being moved around
Mhm.
is not healthy for children. It's almost actually not that good, because the kids, they will bond with the visitors, the volunteers, and then when they leave again, there will be separation anxiety. So, oh, why am I being rejected again? So it's actually not always that helpful, unfortunately.
Right. And it's really important for like children to be attached, right? To have a strong
Mm-hmm.
foundation. And I believe that you had that when you were growing up. And it's amazing because you were able to experience loving family and also a home that provided for your needs. So let's go back to the more personalized approach in your experience, Alex. What were the challenges that you had to overcome to get to where you are now?
So I guess to overcome the challenges, so I'll kind of go back into the past a bit again and talk about what the conditions were like. So I'll give an example. In my orphanage, despite them, trying to care the best as they could for me, there there wasn't maybe always that much food, because when I was adopted, I would take an my parents were told I always stole an apple from a girl, and I was bitten as a result in one of my left cheeks, as I mentioned on in my TEDx talk.
Mhm.
And so I had to learn that as a child. Then, when I was adopted, or I developed a condition where you would rock backwards and forwards, because in the orphanage, kids didn't get any stimulation, any physical touch.
Mhm.
So I had quite a bit of basically therapy when I was adopted as a kid, like basically to get fine motor skills up again and again, or horse riding. There was quite a bit of basically developmental delayed,
Mhm.
or the ability to speak fluently. I only spoke fluently at around 5 years of age.
Okay. But right now you're speaking in front
Yeah,
of
so there was just
big people. And it's amazing how you are able to like overcome those challenges.
that, and I guess what enabled it was the support of my close family.
Yeah.
Despite when I was adopted, as I said in my TEDx talk, was I said my parents were told basically by a psychologist that Alex wouldn't be able to do anything meaningful in life. One barely finished school and university would be impossible for him. But my family, they didn't believe that, they believed otherwise.
Mhm. So I'm just like curious, Alex. Now that you like speak in front of like big people, and also you were able to, advocate for include this in your advocacy. Like, you also grew up in Romania, and also you were born in Romania and you grew up in Germany, and then you spent quite a quality a long time in New Zealand, where you were also earned your degree. Um, like what are the like? Do you speak fluent like the language in Romania and German language, and like I know that you speak English right now, so like what other languages do you speak?
So I'm basically I'm fluent in English, of course, and in German, but Romanian I didn't learn any as a child. They didn't speak to us at all in the orphanage, basically.
Oh, okay, okay. But
And I was adopted at 2 years old. So that
yeah,
yeah, so
it's amazing how you're able to like communicate with a lot of like diverse people, because like you were able to speak in the Romanian parliament, and also um you've communicated with people from also in New Zealand, and you grew up in Germany, so you spoke with a lot of people, so you have a wide range of vocabulary, and it's amazing because I would that is an exact proof that what your psychiatrist or like therapist before like predicted about your future is entirely wrong. So now that you are like able to achieve great leaps with your campaign for international adoption. So the next question is, what is one valuable advice that you can give to an adoptee with the same experience that you have?
well, I guess the first advice or something that I would give is actually challenge a bit people, because actually not every adoption is the same. Even if, let's say, I've got an adopted friend that's adopted from Russia that founded the NGO that I'm part of, and while we've both had supportive families and things, his experience is still different than my one, because it does so many different things. For instance, your time in the orphanage might have been different,
Mm-hmm.
or this, or other things, or even the way, even if we, let's say, had, let's say, grown up if we would have been in the same orphanage, it's still different because everyone deals with things differently. So I think the first advice is, it's okay that if that your journey, your adoptive journey is different than your own, than somebody else's, and that's totally fine. So you're on your own journey. And I think the second point is, don't, kind of learn to become comfortable in your own skin. So if people ask me where I'm from now, I said, yeah, I'm adopted. I say that to people. I mean, I even take it sometimes a bit far, and I say, yeah, I'm the black sheep of the family, or, kind of
You're
take
not a
it,
black sheep.
throw in a bit of some jokes there. No, but just, being able to throw in a few jokes there and being able to be comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, yeah. So
And I
that's
guess even, take it, as an, and even maybe, even take it as an advantage. I mean, even, like, even take your experience and, even say that for careers or something, say, hey, because I've had this diverse experience, it's, you can say, because of this unique diverse experience, I'm able to deal with more diverse people and be thoughtful of more different opinions and backgrounds.
right. And
So I
it's
think take
yeah,
an advantage of that, your journey.
right. I do agree with you. It's really important to like anchor our confidence over who we are, and that really helps the that really helps children, especially children who don't really have like parents to grow up with. That really helps them build a strong sense of foundation of their self. And the last question probably, Alex, is like we both know that you're still young and you have a lot of achievements so far, and you will still go far in life. So how can the youth like us participate in global affairs, like whatever advocacy, like aside from in like you yourself, you are advocating for um international adoption, so that's great. But then again, there are other youth communities out there who are also advocating for other like issues and other prevalent problems that this world has. And there are ways to combat them, there are ways to address them. And then how can like youth like us, or like people who are in our generation, can help to address these problems?
That's a really good question. And I think my answer is going to be a very broad response. But from my experience, I think it is being, I think it's not only being able to be passionate about a topic, because a lot of people are passionate about things, but it's actually trying to at least provide some kind of tangible solution.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think focusing on, so not focusing on the problem, but trying to find tangible solutions. And the other bit is trying to collaborate,
Mm-hmm.
be it with people or organization, because you can't solve all problems yourself. You have to work with others. You can't have all the expertise, but find out what are you good at and how can you use your value to add value to the other side, to work together in partnerships
Right.
to
Right.
bring about meaningful change.
So tangible solution
And
is
I've seen it personally and professionally.
Mhm. So yeah, and you're doing great with what you do, because you're advocating for something that is helpful to a new generation of children. And the work still continues. And you also mentioned that you have been through to a lot of like countries, like especially also in Southeast Asia, where you also address the same solutions that you are addressing, and the same concerns that you are also addressing in Europe, in Eastern Europe, and also in Australasia. So yeah, I commend you for that. And once again, thank you very much for like sharing your insight, and for coming here on my on my still small vlog, but I hope it's growing.
No, that's really great. Thank you for inviting me,
Yeah,
Angelo.
thank you, thank you. So once again, folks, Alex Cook, I will be providing the links of his speaking engagement and talks on the description below this video. And if we have like other projects where we can participate in Alex Cook's campaign against uh, mistreatment against our orphan children, then I will also provide the links below. So thank you once again, Alex, for being here. And I hope you have a great week ahead.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.